Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Donald Trump telling porkies about his reasons for not coming to Britain, and a second referendum mooted by Nigel Farage yesterday. It's almost as if people are determined not to let us talk about anything else on this programme. Other stories that have appeared on my radar since we last spoke together include the number of teachers taking long-term sickness leave due to stress. There's a smacking story that's been bubbling under all week, and there's a tale from Tipton in the West Midlands about a primary school that essentially segregated pupils at playtime, depending on whether or not their parents had made a voluntary donation towards the purchase of new sports equipment. That story, more than perhaps any of the others, I think is really fascinatingly nuanced. I'll tell you why if we have time. I've also got the author Johan Hari dropping by to tell us about his new book examining the reported, I don't know quite what the word is. He is persuaded and has written an astonishing tome to this effect that a lot of the way that our society deals with depression and associated disorders is wrong. And I know that if you listen to this programme on a regular basis, then like me, you must have wondered what is happening differently from in previous generations. So either previous generations had similar levels of mental health problems, but we just ignored them or glossed over them, or something in the last, 20 to 30 years has shifted inexorably in Western societies and led to a massive upsurge in these types of conditions. I'm not sure which it is. I lean towards the second analysis, and Johan Hari's book very much plays into that narrative. But let's begin. Well, I don't know. Phone lines are open. 0345 60 60 973 is the number that you need. What are we going to talk about? I'd really like to talk about one section of the Brexit debate. The section that would be most outraged by the notion of a second referendum. And I think the analogy we came up with yesterday, and I'm going to try and do this in a charitable way. I don't necessarily want to ignite or light the blue touch paper this morning, not yet. In a charitable way, because I am trying now to describe people whose position leaves me utterly bereft. But that doesn't make you bad people. If you have got a car and you are so desperate to get rid of it, you have been persuaded, and let's say for the sake of argument at this point, let's say rightly or wrongly, someone has persuaded you that your car is the only car you've got, okay, and it still goes, but someone has persuaded you that it is an absolute heap. Someone has persuaded you that you have to get rid of this car. This car is so awful. And they've used words like sovereignty and symbolism, and they may even have made promises about the next car you'll get, but they're promises that can be neither kept nor can the people who made those promises be held to them. This is crucial, okay? You've got this car. It still goes. It's past its MOT, but it's far from perfect. I'm describing now what I would loosely typify as hard Brexit supporters who aren't going to make a huge amount of money out of the potential disaster capitalism that may follow, okay? I'm talking about people who are going to be worse off and somehow now claim that they knew that all along and want to be. They're happy being worse off. So you've got this car. I suppose if we were feeling emotive, you could say the kids are in the back of it and all your belongings are in the boot, but you're still determined to stick it in the crusher because am I already misrepresenting you? You really don't care about what happens next. These are the people who were either not heard or not honest in the run-up to the referendum. These are the people who now claim they knew all along it was a leap into the unknown. In the run-up to the referendum, they knew everything about what was going to happen next. They knew how much money we'd save. We knew where it would be spent. We knew what our country would look like. We knew that they needed us more than we needed them. We knew that we'd be able to do magnificent new trade deals with lots and lots of unspecified but incredibly wealthy and trade-friendly countries. And we knew that leaving the European Union would have no downside whatsoever. All of the people that either told you that or believed that now insist that they said all along it was a complete shot in the dark that would involve serious short-term pain in return for hoped-for long-term gain. Okay, I don't think I've upset anyone yet, have I? Because if I haven't described you, then I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about hard Brexiters, people who think that leaving with no deal is preferable to what we have now. And they're mad by all intellectual measures. But emotionally, they make perfect sense because they hate the status quo so much. And I don't know that respect is the word I'd use to describe my attitude to that position, but I acknowledge it. So you've got your car. It's past its MOT. Your kids are in the back. All your belongings are in the boot. You don't know what you're going to get next. A couple of racist liars have told you you're going to get a Rolls Royce or a newly saddled unicorn. A couple of slightly more pragmatic people have told you that you're probably going to get a bicycle or possibly a tandem, but you don't get to decide yet who's going to be on the other bit of the tandem. Someone over there's promised you a Reliant Robin, and you said, well, that's not as nice as the car that I'm taking to the crusher. I've got a Ford Cortina. It's a bit run down, but it's better than a Reliant Robin. And then they say, yes, but you just drive the Reliant Robin for a while. And after 10 to 15 years, your Rolls Royce will be delivered. Or maybe not your Rolls Royce, maybe a Ford Mondeo. Is that the next up from a Cortina? You may have gathered that cars aren't really my area of special expertise. But I have spent the last 18 months obsessing about what replaces the car. And the people I'd most like to talk to today are the people who don't care. And I will try not to. I've called you mad, but that's said with love. I'll try not to be any ruder than that. I'll probably fail, because I'm only human, just like you. But you don't care, and you're the people I'd love to talk to. I don't know that I'll change your mind. You can come on the radio and all of your arguments can fall apart, and you'll go away absolutely convinced that you're even more right than you were before, and lots of people will tweet and text in to call you stupid and suggest that you were specially selected because you're so stupid, but they haven't got the guts to ring in because they know the same would happen to them. And the mistake I've made is thinking that here's an intellectual argument, here's some evidence, here's some facts. There you go, the emperor's naked. Everyone can see that now. But you can't. You don't want to. You don't care what replaces the Ford Cortina. All you care about, and I underestimated the strength of this position and the number of people that hold it. All you care about is crush the Cortina. And then it's crushed. This is why I think the second referendum balloon was sent up into the air yesterday, but given who it was that sent it up into the air, no one should be surprised that it came straight back down again a few hours later. Look at me, please. The bottom line here is simple, isn't it? What are you going to do after your car has been crushed? How are you going to get home? And still you don't care. And that I think, is at the heart of any second referendum. Not just the existence of people who just don't care about how they get home. They just want to crush the Cortina. But also the failure of the media and almost all of people who campaign for Remain to understand that. And it is built upon, I will, for the sake of argument, suggest there may be a rational basis for not caring what replaces the car you've currently got, not knowing how you're going to get home, not knowing whether or not you'll even be able to go to the shops tomorrow because you're going to be reliant on what? I don't know, buses? You don't care. Probably shouldn't bring buses into it, although that 350 million quid a week seems to have gone very quiet, doesn't it? They're the people that everything depends upon. I just don't know how many of them there are. And I don't really know where this introduction is leading, except to acknowledge that constituency. Absolutely crucial to any discussion about the second referendum are the people who do not care. Everybody else thinks it's the most important element of everything, whether you Leave or Remain. The idea that the single most important issue that's faced Britain since the end of the Second World War will be what our relationship with the European Union looks like after we leave it, ignores completely all of the people who don't care. They don't want any relationship at all. Speech that Tony Blair gave in Strasbourg in 2005 that I hadn't seen before. It popped up on social media the other day, simply saying, we're not at war anymore. We're trying to build a better world together. We're not at war anymore. So I suppose the question is, if I try to understand the people who don't care what replaces the Ford Cortina, 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. If it is you, and I've probably offended you a little bit, but that's all right, you can offend me back, you don't care what it is. Why? Is it because you think we're still at war? Is it because of some sort of post-Second World War hangover that just prevents you from seeing Germans or French people as being in any way the same as you? There's some fundamental concept that they must be our enemies. That German still means Nazis. Well, no, it can't be that, because an awful lot of people in the constituency I've described are quite comfortable with Nazi ideology, as we've seen with their support for Donald Trump. Is that it? Or am I just wasting my time again because I'm trying to provide a rational analysis of what is essentially an emotional position? And it's an understandable emotional position. If you were born between, someone said it was 1946 and 1964, that generation were raised in such a way that people born before and people born after struggle to see the world as they see it. It's that post-war, post-empire sense of a lost glory coupled with lost status, and somehow the idea that you can get it back. It'd be a bit like the Portuguese suggesting that they want to go back to the days of Vasco da Gama when they ruled the waves. But yeah, I do. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I can't change the person that I am. I want to understand you. So if you do not care, so there's no way, there is nothing on earth that would make you change your vote in a second referendum, because even though you can now see that none of the promises made in the run-up are going to come true, you genuinely don't care, because all you want is to see that old Cortina get crushed. Even if your kids are in the back and all your belongings are in the boot, and you have no idea how you're going to get home from the scrapyard. I wonder if you're kind enough to admit that I've just described you. And I wonder if there's anything you can say that would help me understand you better. The people who don't care what replaces our EU membership, the people who can hear the phrase, we'll just fall into World Trade Organization rules, and whether they understand what that means or not, that sounds better than what we've currently got. They're the people I'm most interested today as talk of a second referendum rears its uglyish head. Just for the record, for my money, if there was a second referendum, it would need to have about 60-40 one way or the other. If it was 52-48 Remain, I think we'd be worse off than we are now as a country in terms of division. And dedicating my life for the last 18 months to trying to understand this division better has led me to the conclusion that the people who are scrapping the car don't care what replaces it. Maybe they did before the referendum, but since the referendum, it's clear. We knew it was going to be a shot in the dark. We knew, no one ever knew what we were going to have after we scrapped the car, but we must scrap the car. Even if you end up with a unicycle that you don't know how to ride, you'll be happy. Gosh. Robert's in Preston. Robert, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, James. First-time caller.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I do listen to the show all the time. I was actually a marginal, if you like to call it, a Remain voter. I was very undecided and eventually voted to Remain. But I employ a lot of people, and the vast majority of them voted to leave.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, a lot of them have probably fallen into the category of these hard Brexiteers, if you like, if you spoke to them about it, because the way I've seen it is they see themselves, while we are all Europeans and we are effectively all people, they see that our culture very different from a lot of Europe. So they see people deciding things for them in Europe as being perhaps not always in their best interest. So I think that's part of the reason.
It's hard to sort of have a conversation that describes other people's positions, because neither of us can really examine it. But if you were to ask them what sort of things they feel have been done to their detriment by the European Parliament or the European Commission, which of course we're one of the most represented countries in, but what sort of things would they point at? I presume it's immigration and there's nothing else.
Yeah, well, not necessarily just that, but the typical things that people were led to believe, like the sovereignty and things like this, and laws as well. You know.
Well, but what? Again, we're going to struggle to spec what, because you say what laws, and they can't name anything, can they?
Exactly. No, they can't. No.
So do they care? Do they? Sorry to interrupt you, but I really want to focus on people who don't care what replaces what we've got. Would they fall into that category? Do you think, your workforce?
Yeah, they don't. Well, they don't care. They, talk of £50 million exit, £50 billion. They don't care about that, because they don't know how all the money that's paid in gets allocated anyway. the fact that the Tory government finds all the additional money to pay to the Northern Ireland, it's just all big sums of money to them. And to be honest, they don't follow the debate anyway now.
So this is the point, isn't it? And you do describe exactly the kind of people I want to talk to rather than talk about. It is that there's we overthink this stuff. It is, look, here is something. They've been persuaded it's awful. They don't care what replaces it. They just want to get rid.
Yes, that's it, yeah.
How's it going to affect your business?
Well, it does. It affects it. It's uncertainty, and anything uncertainty. The snap election affects business. Any uncertainty that prevents people from making investments, spending money, this type of thing. If you're in the car business now, the uncertainty with diesel cars, that's affecting the business. So the Brexit thing, the longer it bubbles on and the more talk of a second referendum, the more uncertainty everybody feels.
And do you export? Do you export to any European Union?
No.
So it's just the fall in the pound that would have hit you, and it could have hit you positively if you buy from abroad.
Yes.
No, it couldn't. I got that the wrong way around. But there are people who've benefited from the fall in the pound, largely, of course, foreign investors. It's why manufacturing and the FTSE have done very well out of this. You could, if you were so minded, typify it as a closing down sale. And if your capital is kept in a currency other than sterling, you're laughing all the way back to the bank. Robert, thank you. I'm moving on, largely because I don't want to talk about these people. I want to talk to them. Stuart is in Croyd, in Devon. What a lovely part of the world. Stuart, what would you like to say? I was at Baggy Point only a few weeks ago.
Oh, were you? Yeah, so was I. Hello, yeah. Well, I voted Remain and campaigned quite hard in amongst my family to Remain. But now I'm really quite a staunch Leaver.
Why?
And I do think, to a certain extent, I don't really care. I don't really. I mean, the uncertainty is the main point. The uncertainty of it all is killing my business, and so I just really want us to get on with it as quickly as possible. I think it's constitutionally impossible to reverse it. We've done it now.
It's not constitutionally impossible. It might be it might be difficult for all sorts of reasons, but Lord Kerr wrote Article 50, said on this programme that it is definitely revocable. Okay. Obviously, Brexit being Brexit, there are a lot of people that have never even read Article 50 who are convinced that the bloke who wrote it knows less about Article 50 than they do. But I think the received wisdom is that it's definitely revocable. I think there's QCs delivering that message to the Prime Minister today. So, and this is, I admire honesty. I guess ideally you would have been leave before and leave after, but beggars can't be choosers, even with 1 million people listening. So I want to know how can you not care about what replaces it?
Because, I don't think that anybody really knows either way. I know you're always banging on about how brilliant it would be if we did change up.
Not brilliant at all. Just less bad.
How you know that?
Well, I know what life's like now.
Yeah. So how do you know what it's going to be like?
If we don't leave, it'll be more or less the same as it is now, and hopefully we'd be minded to actually get more involved and not send idiots to Strasbourg. We'd send some great politicians.
That's rubbish. Sorry, that's rubbish.
What is?
If we reverse this and we decide to stay now, we've shot our bolt with Europe, and we will have to go back to them cap in hand and ask to stay, and they will say yes, you can, and you can be part of our new federal thing. You'll have to have.
That's not again. That's demonstrably untrue. If we revoke Article 50, we revert to exactly where we were before we triggered it.
Do you think they'll allow us to do that?
It's a legal certainty that they have to. It's revocable. That's what revocable means, Stuart.
Well, okay. All right, I'm wrong then.
Now you're wrong, but you're not going to change your mind, are you?
No.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's Brexit. I'm not sure you were such a staunch Remainer before, because I have no choice but to believe you.
I fell out massively with my own parents.
That choice, I have no choice but to believe you. But that mindset that says, "Oh yes, you've just proved me wrong, but I still believe what I rang in to say," that's a very Brexity position. So of course you're now on.
That's why I rang in, because that's why I rang in, because I don't even know myself why I feel so strongly now that we should leave, when I was so strong that we should stay. And I don't even know most of the facts. I mean, honestly, it's...
Well, that's why you've changed your mind. The more facts you knew, the more married you'd have been to your original position. But by your own admission,
I'm not convinced that anybody does know any of the facts.
I've just given you the facts about Article 50, and you haven't changed your mind about it at all.
No, but monetarily, no one really knows any of the facts, do they? We don't really know what will happen if we leave. We don't really know what...
No, but we know what will happen if we stay. And the whole point, as you would have no doubt acknowledged, is why you fell out with your parents in the run-up to the vote, was that lots of people on the Leave side told you what would happen if we left. They told you that we'd have £350 million in surplus that we might be able to... that we would be able to spend on the NHS. We now know that if we leave without a deal, you're looking at tens of billions of pounds lost to the British economy. No one disputes that on any side of it. Some people say it's a price worth paying for freedom. From what? From a political body that we're an integral part of. But I think Stuart's right. I think there it is in a nutshell. Oh, well, I was wrong, but I'm not going to change my mind. That's Brexit in a bottle. Brendan is in Portsmouth. Brendan, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. How are you? All right?
I mustn't grumble.
Good. All right. Well, first-time caller to your show. I think we're roughly around the same age. I was born in 1974.
Oh, you're younger than me. I'm 46 tomorrow.
2 years. Yeah, good. Well, happy birthday for tomorrow.
Thank you very much. We're going to run out of time. It's 10:28. So
no, good. All right. Well, I think there's a contingency on either side, Remain and Brexit, that are just hardcore, not for turn, and you just won't convince them either way. And I think we just have to acknowledge it's the same on the Remain camp as what it is on the Brexit camp.
So what facts are the Remain camp in denial about?
Well, I just don't think that. I think there's 20% on the Remain camp roughly that just won't. So you just can't convince them.
But what facts are they in denial about?
What facts are they in denial about? Well, they're just...
Because you just heard Stuart. Stuart said, I know, I realise now that I'm wrong, but I'm not going to change my mind. What would be the Remain equivalent of someone who knows they're wrong but refuses to change their mind?
Well, we all know the European Union wasn't perfect from the outset.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I think, if that's the starting point for your argument, I think it crumbles a little bit when you acknowledge that it's not very good to begin with.
No one said it wasn't very good. You've done that slightly disrespectful thing. You've moved from not perfect to saying not very good. Nothing's perfect. Very good is a measure, and leaving has to be demonstrably better than what we've currently got. So there are people on the Remain side who have failed to see any future that is better than what we've currently got. And you might be right when you say they're being stubborn. So what would you say to them to persuade them that we could be better off than we are now?
Well, I think it's just the same old cliches, James, I'm afraid. It's just look globally, come outside the European Union and trade with the rest of the world. I know that 2005...
Like who? What country would you point to? What country would you point to?
The United States, Canada, people...
Well, they're in all sorts of trade agreements. And Canada has a trade agreement with the European Union. So you want to be more like America?
Well, they're a strong economy, yes. I mean...
How many people are there in America?
Well, I don't know how many...
And how many people are there in Britain?
How many people there were in America? I've only to let you know that I know that 2005 clip that you referred to over the last couple of days on YouTube, where Blair does say to Farage, and I think he stands up to him very well and said, you sit there with our country's flags on your desk, you do not represent the views of our country.
We're not at war anymore.
No, exactly. And it's interesting that you find that interesting and you see that as a positive for the Remain camp, whereas when I get concerned about the progress of Brexit, I look at that clip and I get a boost from that and think...
You think we are still at war with them?
Well, I don't think we're at war with them. Well,
how do you get a boost from someone saying that we're not then?
The European Union, the establishment that is the European Union. It was David against Goliath for me, and it was. I'm just trying to. This is the bit that is the dichotomy between us, and I think.
Well, I just keep asking you for evidence, and you keep saying David and Goliath. It's not a dichotomy. It's an emotional position versus one that seeks to be intellectual. So just finally, because I'm late for the news, when, for example, people say,
compliment.
Yeah, you must take it as a compliment. When people say that, for example, we can be like Norway and Switzerland, and now we know that they were either utterly ignorant of what that meant or they were lying to you. What's the Remain equivalent of that?
What's the Remain equivalent of...
There's an echo in this studio. You keep saying that there's people on the Remain side who are just like the stubborn leavers. I want to know what it is that they are denying.
I'm not sure what they're denying.
Right.
I would say
I'm not sure they exist, you see, so that's why I'm asking for detail.
Yeah, I would just say finally, Dave, because while I've got you here, but before we be careful when you say that when you compare hard Brexiteers to Trump supporting Nazis, it can really sow division and resentment across communities in the country, and you're doing it from a national platform.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid it's true. Some people are sympathetic to Donald Trump's white supremacist views, and they are also supporters of hard Brexit. But if anybody genuinely fails to understand the simplicity of that statement. I'm quite happy to state that, of course, there are lots of people who want to leave the European Union who find Donald Trump just as repellent as I do. But I generally find myself to be wasting my breath when I say things like that, because people are determined to hear what they want to hear, just as they're determined to believe that there are some reality-denying, fact-phobic Remainers. And then when you ask for proof or evidence of it, they do what you just did, mate. Any Remainers who were encouraged yesterday by the prospect of a second referendum, I would suggest need to have a cold shower, because what I have discovered from talking about this issue almost every day for the last 18 months, it sometimes feels like, is the people that no one knew existed, people who genuinely don't care what happens next. And it doesn't matter how many referendums you have, or even how much evidence emerges that we're going to be worse off. They don't care. They want to scrap the car that we're in. Although I suspect that Nick in Hampshire has come up with a better analogy than mine. It's more like you've had a row with BT about your £30 internet, James, so you cancel the contract from March 2019. When that time comes around, the best deal you can find to replace it is with Sky at £40. Problem then is that money's very tight, so it means the kids won't get any pocket money. The choice is surely between BT or Sky, not Sky or nothing, as you can't stand BT. That's brilliant. It is exactly like that. It's exactly like saying, well, I'm cancelling my membership. I've got no idea what I'm going to replace it with. And even if what I replace it with is worse and more expensive than what we've got now, I hate what we've got now so much, I don't mind. And I know that I'm holding up the mirror again, and a lot of people listening to this program aren't going to like what they see in it. But that's it, isn't it? That's all we hear. I don't care. And then you have to then, of course, get rid of experts. You have to then add to that the country's had enough of experts. Some economic forecasts are wrong. Some economic forecasts are right. Some things predicted come true. Some things predicted don't come true. But some things are demonstrable deceits. So anybody who mentioned in the referendum campaign Norway or Switzerland as being countries whose model we could follow, and now claims that we were going to leave the single market and the customs union all along, this is by no means a left-right divide. I think a lot of Jeremy Corbyn's position is contained within that refusal to accept that you can be in the European Union, you can be in the customs union without being in the European Union. But anybody who mentioned Norway or Switzerland is a demonstrable liar. But it doesn't matter, because what they do is get the car into the crusher, and that's all that a significant swathe of the Leave vote care about. And I mean, you can get unhappy with me about describing them so accurately, but I've actually been quite polite, I think, today. 10:40 is the time. Jack's in Nottingham. Jack, people who just don't care about what replaces what we've got and are convinced that all of the experts describing how things can't possibly be better than they are now will be ignored. Tell me about those people. Are you one of them?
I wasn't originally. When I first started, I really, really was passionate about leaving. But I felt like the Leave campaign really pushed the boat forward compared to the Remain.
Yes.
I felt the Remain was just awful. But when I voted for Brexit, I didn't vote for this government we've got at the moment. I didn't vote for that. When it was Brexit, I voted for the idea of it. I didn't vote for that reason because I wanted people out of the country. I didn't want anything like that. I didn't do the NHS reason. I had my own reasons.
Of course.
When I looked at the government that we got, David Cameron was, I'll leave this country. If they want to leave, we'll leave. And then he went and resigned. I didn't vote for Theresa May. The second that the general election came round and I saw the government that we was going to have in charge, if we vote for Conservative, I voted straight for Labour.
Really?
Yeah, I did, because I just looked at it and I thought, I don't want Theresa May in charge. I didn't think she got anything about her. I feel like she was just really...
I mean, this is an interesting position. I suspect it reflects quite a lot of people. You presumed that David Cameron, who you'd essentially just called an untrustworthy charlatan because his arguments about why we should remain in the European Union you chose to reject. Some of them were sound, some of them were less sound. And you think, having been told by the British public, you're a chancer and a charlatan and a liar, we don't believe you, David Cameron, but we want you to lead us through this period that you think is going to be disastrous.
No, what it was is I felt he'd already said that he wanted to remain. However...
In Downing Street or in the European Union?
In the European Union, I didn't want to be in it. I didn't want to be in it.
No.
But when you actually looked at the Remain campaign to the Leave campaign, even you have got to admit yourself that the Leave campaign was a lot stronger, even if it was live. And
it's not a question of admitting stuff. It's selling tickets for the ghost train versus selling tickets for the speak your weight machine. I mean, if you're in it for just for counting tickets and bums on seats, it's leave all day long, all the way home. But now we're over that line, and how accurate or fair is it of me to suggest that a significant swathe of the Leave vote either have become or were always persuaded that Chapter 2 doesn't matter with it? We just have to scrap the car. We just have to cancel the contract. We just have to destroy what we've currently got without having a Scooby-Doo what we're going to replace it with. Is that a fair description of people?
I would say it is. I feel like...
Is it a fair description of you, Jack?
No.
Okay.
No, I feel that a lot of people voted Leave, and I'm going to say it is very uneducated. A lot of people just said, we want them out of our country, it'll make the NHS better, the roads be better, and that's just not that's what it wasn't about for me. But when I voted Leave, I expected either David Cameron to lead or someone stronger. I didn't expect Theresa May. I didn't expect Boris Johnson to be... Do you know what I mean?
I kind of know what you mean, but I can't. I mean, it'd be short of getting Gandalf to do it or Professor Dumbledore. Nobody could turn leaving the European Union into a process that will leave us in a better position than we're in now. Nobody.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that.
Okay.
But the problem is, for me, is the fact that I did care, but now I've seen what government we now have in charge.
Yes.
I know we're not going to get a good deal. If I'd have known that this...
There is no such thing as a good deal. If we take good as meaning better than what we've currently got, there's no such thing.
I understand that, but there were so many things that I disagreed with the European Union that I didn't...
Go on, give me a favourite.
Honestly.
Yeah.
When... just for something little, when we went to put the, say, tampon tax through for females, and we pushed that through, and we went to the European Union, they were the ones who rejected that. We actually put that forward. They rejected that.
Didn't that happen after the referendum?
Pardon?
Didn't that happen after the referendum?
I don't know, but all I know is that they rejected it, and I do know that once we put anything forward, that they can, as long as we can make our own rules, but they can also reject it if they want to.
I'm not across the tampon tax. It may well be that this is the holy grail we've been searching for 18 months, but it's...
No, don't play that.
It's not... It's not...
I know what you're doing. You're not playing that one.
I'm not. I'm saying I don't know. I don't know that it was somehow something that... Because I think VAT is set by member states. It's not set centrally. Different rates of VAT because they've put it up to 20%. So it can't be something that the European Union has control over.
No, but the thing that they put it in for is the fact that they've put it down as a luxury item when it's not a luxury item. And they were the ones that rejected the notion and said that it is a luxury item. And that's the reason why it got declined. I'm not saying that that's the reason why, but what I am saying is the fact that they could... If we put a rule forward or something that we wanted to change,
I disagree. All right, just Wikipedia, okay? United Kingdom has levied a value-added tax on sanitary products since it joined the European Economic Community in 1973. The rate was reduced to 5% specifically for sanitary products in 2000, with lobbying from the MP Dawn Primarolo saying that the reduction was about fairness and doing what we can to lower the cost of a necessity. That is, you're right, the lowest rate possible under the European Union's value-added tax law. And after 2015, that doesn't allow zero rates.
Yeah, to be fair, if you look at anything off Wikipedia, you can't believe a single thing you read off there.
No,
I could write up and I could change that now. Ring up tomorrow and change it.
All right. So I only went to it because it is objective rather than a newspaper, and you could say, oh well, Murdoch would say that, or the Guardian would say that. That's just fact. The dates and the numbers.
They could reject it. They could reject.
No, they have a rule that says you can't go lower than 5%.
Yeah, because they believe that it's a luxury item.
I don't think it's got anything to do. I don't think it's got anything to do with luxury item as such. But that's fine. I mean, but if I now held a gun to your head and said, "Did you really vote to leave the European Union because of a 5% levy on tampons?"
I wouldn't say that at all. But
I didn't think you would.
They could reject the notion.
Yeah. How would you vote now? I've got no idea how you'd vote now if we had another referendum tomorrow.
I don't even know how I'd vote now.
Bless you, mate. Have a great weekend. Who cares? 10:47. We're all going to die eventually anyway. I'm always happy to admit ignorance, although you could be forgiven for noting that it's quite a rare occurrence on this programme. At the European Council Summit in Brussels, this is from March of 2016, the 28 leaders agreed a statement welcoming the intention of the Commission to include proposals for increased flexibility for member states with respect to reduced rates of VAT, which will provide the option to member states of VAT zero rating sanitary products. So 3 months before the referendum vote, British negotiators or lobbyists, call them what you will, campaigners, is that the word? British officials negotiated with their European Union partners and reached an agreement that would have allowed us to have zero VAT on tampons, on sanitary products. So just to clarify what Jack was saying before the break, I think we both get a little bit of an education from that. Presumably, and by presumably I acknowledge I could be completely wrong, that all just got put on ice now that we've voted to leave. It doesn't matter anymore. So I think you still pay 5% on sanitary products, and if we have a trade deal with the European Union that involves regulatory alignment, we still would do if it wasn't for, God, talk about complicated. But anyway, now we're clear. 10:53 is the time. Aaron is in Stevenage. Aaron, people who just don't care what replaces what we've currently got. Are you one of them?
I am, because I think I've got 2 young children. I wasn't thinking for when I voted leave that for myself. I was thinking more for them, and I think it'll be a better country if we're not in the European Union, as decide with no deal compared to if we was in them with everything.
In what ways do you think that your kids will be better off? And how long do you think we're going to be worse off before things get better? Not your whole life, surely.
No. I think we'd be better off we'd be worse off for at least maybe 2 to 3 years.
From what? From March 2019 or from the end of the transition period?
From March 2019.
Okay, so you think we'll be on the upturn by 2022?
So maybe a little bit later than that, but yeah.
Okay, and what's going to be better? What do you think is going to improve?
I just like the idea that they would grow up without the constrictions of it.
What constrictions?
Well, the fact that we couldn't bypass our own laws, we had to ask them permission for everything. It's like going to your teacher for everything.
That's not true, but how would it improve your children's life?
Well, to be quite honest, I'm not entirely sure. I just think a better life, they'd have a better chance in the future. Because
they won't be able to go to study or work in other European Union countries without having to get a visa or jump through various bureaucratic hoops. At the moment, there's half the world is their oyster. We're taking that away from them. So what do they get in return, do you think? What's the boat when they say, Dad, why did you vote? I'd love to have gone to study at the Sorbonne in Paris, but I can't because you voted to leave the European Union. And you'll say, yes, son, but look what you got in return. What are you going to tell him?
Well, why couldn't they?
Because we're not going to have freedom of movement between the European Union member states, Aaron.
But you could still surely pay. There's other ways, I would have thought, surely.
No. It will be harder. It may not be impossible, but it will be considerably harder. At the moment, you don't need to do anything. It's going to study in a European country is the same as going to study in Britain. So when your boy says, "Why did you do that, Dad?" and you say, "Because you got this in return," what do you think you'd point at first? The stuff that he's got when he's 18 that you feel European Union membership meant you didn't have when you were 18.
Well, I'm in a position because I'm fairly ignorant of these ways. I was literally just listening to the Vote and Remain campaigns.
Yeah.
I tend to listen to arguments before I vote.
So what was your favourite argument then?
Well, the fact that I didn't like the fact that the Remain campaign kept scaremongering and that sort of thing.
For example?
I can't remember a specific fact, but there was I was watching. I think it was one of the debate on TV.
Yeah.
And it came. They said, "Well, this." It was with that bloke off Dragon's Den. I can't remember his name. But he said, one bloke said, "Well, how many trade deals have we got in outside the EU?" And he said something like 5. But the bloke from Dragon's Den said, "No, it's only like 2." And that was on. You could check that on the website. So I didn't like the fact that they were trying to scare us into that and probably deceive us, because I did double check on that at the time, and I did find out it wasn't correct.
Right.
So at the moment, I just found the Remain campaign to be a bit deceitful, and that's what really swung me.
But you can't remember precisely what the deceit.
Oh no,
was.
I couldn't. I was working nights at the time. It was
fair
like
enough.
4 o'clock in the morning.
I'll ask you once more, but I don't want to hector you. What is going to be better in your children's life compared to now?
Well, compared to now, I mean, I can't say for definite because obviously I can't predict nothing, but I would just say the fact that I would prefer their lives to be not run by like Brussels. I know it's not strictly that.
And you know that I have to ask you this because I respect you. How are their lives currently run by Brussels? What is it that they have to do or can't do that you feel they will be able to do or won't have to do after we've left?
Well, it's just what I've found difficult in my life at the minute. I mean, I'm struggling to like find a property to live and what have you, and it's just my life at the minute is just an ongoing struggle because I work 50 plus hours a week for pennies.
Yeah.
I know it's not strictly the European Union's fault, but...
And of course those pennies are now worth 15% less internationally than they were before you voted.
Sorry, what was that?
Those pennies are now worth quite a bit less than they were before you voted.
Exactly, yeah, but I know that, but the way I see
so
that...
So just finally, I'm going to... Because you can say I can't think of anything, James. So your kids are going to be... That you think that by leaving the European Union, your kids are going to find it easier to buy a house and get paid more than you do?
Well, not strictly, no, because...
Well, what then, Aaron?
Well, in all fairness, I can't, like I say, I can't really think of a way. I just believe it'll be better. I can't think of specific examples.
Okay. That's fair.
I just believe their life would be better without it.
But we can't name a single way in which it will.
Well, no, I mean, like I say, I had their interests at heart, and it's like I wasn't... If I was voting, I had a couple of mates...
Their interests, many would argue, are best served by being part of the largest single market in the world. A single market that, after the Japanese trade deal was signed last month, now represents about 30% of the entire planet's GDP. They have freedom of movement between all of the 27 other member states, which means they can work, they can study, they can fall in love with people and move to these countries. They had, for example, if when they became pensioners, they wanted to go and visit the Acropolis in Greece, then they just need to flash their passport, demonstrate their European Union membership, and they don't even have to pay to get in. I mean, the list of if they went into business and they wanted to trade with the European Union, you could, of course, say, well, they don't have to trade with the people we're geographically closer to. We could do lots of great trade with Ulaanbaatar, and I could construct a very, very long list of things that you've denied your children, things that you had growing up that they're not going to have. And when I ask you what's on your list of things they're going to have that you think will be better than you, we can both agree, can we, before the news? Your list has nothing on it.
Practically, yeah.
Okay,
well,
mate.
I'm a bit ignorant. I'm like I say, I'm young and ignorant.
No, you're not. You're not. Well, you may be, but it's not your fault. The only bit of advice I'd give you, at risk of being a little bit patronising, perhaps, is that's what experts are for, so that the rest of us don't have to spend our lives worrying about the technical stuff. Just a quick postscript to the conversation we had in the last hour. I don't like it. I think of all the things that I don't like about the Brexit debate. I don't like when people who aren't fully appraised of the facts and are honest enough to admit it. I don't think they deserve to be insulted. So I just mention that. I'll tell you who does deserve to be insulted. Any politician who has stated in public since the referendum that we would not have to pay to leave. Anybody who has said the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true, which is a direct quote from about 6 months ago on Question Time of the new Minister for Leaving the European Union. I had a bit of a toing and froing yesterday with a chap in Hampstead. I forget his name. I think it was Mike, who was trying to explain to me that what Suella Fernandez was talking about on Question Time was a different bill from the one that we have now paid. So I went to that department just for a little bit of clarity. I'm very keen to hear what she now says specifically with regard to her insistence that everyone who said we would have to pay to leave was scaremongering. So I'm going back to the clip just to be absolutely certain that I've got this right.
You're absolutely right. And this figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured. And it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. health warning, don't believe it. We pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain. Our best days lie ahead, and we're going to be enjoying the freedoms and enjoying the benefits that we gain from leaving.
So I was doubly confused by that, because the terms of negotiation were set at the very outset. You'll remember that's the one that David Davis said would be the row of the summer, and it lasted, I think, just under 10 seconds before he agreed to the European Union's precepts on the negotiation. And the settlement, the divorce bill, call it what you will, was one of those things. We cannot move on to a trade deal until three things have been settled: the Northern Irish border, the bill that you will pay, and the status of European Union citizens living here and British citizens living in the European Union. So I remember at the time watching that and thinking, how can this person be a member of Parliament? She's stating that we won't have to pay a bill that is contingent, that all of our trade negotiations are contingent upon. And then Mike and Hampstead yesterday trying to argue that it was a different bill she was talking about made me think I may have got it wrong. So we've been to the department. we never got an answer from Joe Johnson about how much he knew about Toby Young's vile public statements about disabled people and women, children with special educational needs. We never got an answer, and now he's moved on. He's been demoted. He's at Transport now, so we never will know how much Boris Johnson's little brother knew about Boris Johnson's friend Toby Young's disgusting record before appointing him to an advisory government role. But we're replacing Joe with Suella, because I really want to know what she meant. I just wanted to say, sorry, I got that wrong. In fact, I really think that for 2018, that's going to be my mission, to get politicians to say, sorry, I got that wrong. They won't say it to us, because none of them will come on the programme anymore, but we would obviously be happy to read out their statement of contrition. This is, alas, the statement that we got from the Department for Exiting the European Union spokesperson. That's still headed up by David Davis, of course, who said he'd resign if Damien Green got the chop. Damien Green got the chop, David Davis didn't resign. We have agreed a fair financial settlement with the EU, enabling us to move to the next stage of negotiations. This is a good deal for the taxpayer, which will see the end of vast sums of money going to the EU every year, while ensuring we honour the commitments made during our membership. This is expected to be between 35 and 39 billion pounds in current terms, significantly less than some of the figures being bandied about last year. That's the statement that they've given you and me. The question we asked very specifically was what she meant when she said the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true, and whether she still stands by it now that we've agreed to pay around 40 billion quid. And I think I'll carry on playing that clip out until I get a specific response to that very specific statement. If you're in any doubt about what the statement is, have another listen to it.
You're absolutely right. And this figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured. And it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. Health warning, don't believe it. We pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain. Our best days lie ahead, and we're going to be enjoying the freedoms and enjoying the benefits that we gain from leaving.
So she said we wouldn't have to pay to leave. We're paying 39 billion quid, or thereabouts. It'll be more than that, of course, in the final analysis. And she got promoted. And that, it seems to me, is the best distillation of the state of British politics that any of us will come across this year. She got it wrong. She said something demonstrably untrue. She's been proven to have been wrong. She won't account for why she was so wrong, or maybe I've misunderstood her and she wasn't wrong at all, but she can't explain why. We won't have to pay to leave. We're paying 39 billion quid. And she got promoted. And that is Brexit Britain, in a nutshell. That and Aaron, just before the break. Not really concerned. Just sort of, well, actually, to be fair to Aaron, he does want things to be better. The most popular Brexit line now is that I knew things would be much worse, but it's worth it because of sovereignty. What does sovereignty mean, mate? I have no idea.